Look at this kid in his hoodie. He looks so sloppy. You're letting this punk-ass kid tell you what to think with highly manipulative video.
Underneath.
Yeah, he's even citing the organization Feeding Our Future, but not showing you the woman who was actually responsible for that organization. Meet Minnesota's fraud mastermind accused of playing God and wielding fake racism claims in Somali scandal. Her name is Amy Bach. But Nick Shirley didn't show you her picture, did he? Because Nick Shirley is not a real journalist. Nick Shirley is a propagandist and a wannabe influencer that is trying to get famous. He's trying to get famous on YouTube, and he is wanting your views and clicks. He is using you. He is feeding you a narrative that you are apt to believe because it fits your already preconceived biases in order to get famous. Critics are demanding accountability from Tim Walz amid a daycare controversy and fraud allegations. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is under growing criticism after a viral online video raised questions about taxpayer dollars going to a Minneapolis daycare center that appeared inactive despite receiving substantial public funding. The video, released by independent journalist Nick Shirley, and I'm going to explain to you why that label should be mocked, shows him visiting the Quality Leering Center, which is hilarious. It's one of the reasons why this story has such potence for the right wing. The sign being misspelled. Quality Leering Center is fucking hilarious. Shirley notes that the facility, which is licensed for 99 children and received roughly $4 million in state funding, displayed a sign that misspelled learning as leering. There's no way we're gonna watch this whole fucking video, but is this a shorter clip?
Where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building. Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota as literally billions.
First of all, I would like to say that the perpetrator of the largest fraud scandal in history is actually a sitting senator. He's a Republican by the name of Rick Scott. We're going to go into that here in just a little bit.
Millions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud it could...
Notice funneled through Somali-ran businesses. He's leaving off some crucial details here.
Actually almost replaced the entire GDP.
And I think he's actually citing the story I'm going to show you here in a little bit.
Of Somalia. These fraudsters have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of dollars to be given to fraudulent businesses underneath.
Yeah, he's even citing the organization Feeding Our Future, but not showing you the woman who was actually responsible for that organization. This man is not a journalist. He is a propagandist. He's a wannabe influencer. Please, right-wingers, stop falling for this shit.
Welfare purposes. Some of this money eventually landed in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia like the Al-Shabaab, and others enriched themselves all at the US taxpayers' expense. And in this video we will break down all of the fraud from start to finish, from going to the fraudulent businesses and confronting the people who are making millions of dollars from the government. And we will also be confronting the incompetent government leaders who let this fraud happen, and to make this...
Look at this kid in his hoodie. He looks so sloppy. My God, this is who right-wingers are letting... You're letting this punk-ass kid tell you what to think with highly manipulative video. He's just going in and harassing people, and then when they get angry that they're being harassed, and he's all calm, it plays to your biases because you want to fucking believe him. But also, he's not uncovering anything that hasn't already been uncovered. We're going to go over that. When he approached the building on a weekday, there were no children visible. The office appeared closed, and a woman at the site loudly protested, incorrectly accusing him of being with immigration enforcement. Now, he went to the building before they were open. That's one of the things that they don't tell you. He was there before 2 o'clock. The building apparently opens at 2 o'clock. It's like a after-school facility or something. The footage quickly spread across social media and drew national attention amid a wider scandal involving alleged fraud in Minnesota's social service programs, which federal officials say may have cost taxpayers billions of dollars. So far, what they have accounted has been around $2 million. May have billions is a wide stretch. Critics argue the problems, ranging from daycare funding to other public assistance programs, have gone unchecked by state leadership. Republican lawmakers and conservative commentators have seized on the video to call for accountability from Walz. Minnesota Rep. Tom Emmer shared the footage on social media, questioning how millions in taxpayer funds could go to a center that appears empty and misspelled its own name. Other critics, including Representative Mike Lawler, political figures such as Elon Musk and Vice President J.D. Vance, have used the controversy to press for investigations and even hearings in Congress. Some analysts and officials have also linked the daycare funding concerns to broader debates over immigration and fraud, noting that many of the entities involved are connected to immigrant communities. However, there is no indication that the Quality Learning Center itself has been charged with wrongdoing. The Walz administration has defended its record, and state officials say investigations into fraud continue, though they dispute the scale suggested by critics. They emphasize that evidence of fraud must be verified and that reforms are underway to improve oversight of social service programs. One of the so-called critics of Governor Tim Walz is this longtime radio host by the name of Hugh Hewitt. He was on his show on the Salem News Channel talking about the alleged fraud scheme.
Use 6 of the excuses for the massive fraud in the Gopher State that Tim Walz has been atop the government to see happen. Looking the other way, running for vice president, clearly,
So we went from a little punk-ass kid wearing a fucking dirty hoodie to this skeleton who's already got 1 foot in the grave. Definitely a face for radio.
I didn't know that until I dove in deep. But let's make sure you hear all of Tim Walz's excuses for up to $9 billion of missing money to crooks. Cut number 9, this is my favorite.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit.
He's correct.
This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy, when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life.
It's the white supremacist excuse. That's a new one. Cut number 10, there's another one.
That's how this works. And so...
Well, I guarantee you it has something to do with white supremacy if you're not going after Mississippi, if you're not going after Florida, if you're not going after the other welfare fraud schemes, if you're not even talking about the biggest perpetrator of fraud in this specific instance, who was a white woman. She wasn't Somali. We're going to get to that.
This, would I have gone out, if you think the governor goes out and checks somebody on Medicaid and if they were there? No, but that's somebody in government needed to do that. And if they didn't do that, or if there were loopholes in this, and what we found is these are poorly written and it left openings, and the goal was to get the money out.
The goal was to get the money out. Cut number 11, another one.
They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
It's sensationalism on the administration's part. Cut number 12.
The lack of leadership out of President Trump and his administration, the lack of any courage amongst members of Congress to deal with the health care situation, continuing to put out misinformation, continuing to dabble in conspiracy theory. But this
misinformation,
he's correct.
Conspiracy theory committed the fraud. Cut number 13.
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed.
A lot of white men have to be held accountable in this massive fraud. Cut number 14.
I think it's asking us then, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general.
Got it? Just doubling down here, different setting. White men are the problem. Cut number 15.
Medicaid fraud will stretch across all racial demographics, all ethnic groups. So I think it's really important for us to note each community's got this in their own midst, but to blame them and say that they should have been responsible for stopping it, I think that's a pretty hard reach. I think
everybody does it. That's basically everybody does it. Every community's got its bad eggs. Cut number 16.
Crimes, you would hope that it's being taught both at home and at schools and in our society. But no, I think this idea that the Somali community's to blame for this because they didn't do more, I think that's how we got into this. And
that's how we got into it. Blaming the Somali community in Minneapolis is how we got into $9 billion of fraud. Cut number 16. No, 17.
All this work that's being done, Donald Trump brought this to the attention like this is something brand new. This is not brand new, and it's been being worked on. But he made it white hot and very dangerous.
It's Donald Trump's fault for making it white hot. We were working on this. We were under the hood. Not. Cut number 18.
I think it's an unfortunate situation, but yeah, I think you need to be more skeptical now in this world. I think the COVID pandemic and the releasing of some of the rules, the relaxing of the rules,
COVID. That's the ticket. COVID. One more. Cut number 19.
And
I love how this dude is just Frankensteining together several different interviews from Tim Walz and making him say what he wants him to say. And even his selectively edited shit still comes across well for Tim Walz. It's just this asshole is framing it for stupid people.
I understand when I speak up, it brings Donald Trump's petty vindictiveness to Minnesota. And this is all about coming and attacking us. He didn't know anything about this. He doesn't know how a Medicaid program works. The only thing he knows about is he's going to double the cost over the next week. But he doesn't know how these programs work or anything about it.
He doesn't.
So he heard and somebody told him the Somalis are
This
stealing money.
whole story is just Donald Trump's fault.
Yeah, it is. Because this story is not really a story. It's been an ongoing investigation for many years now. Here is from Fox fucking News. Meet Minnesota's fraud mastermind accused of playing God and wielding fake racism claims in Somali scandal. Her name is Amy Bach. Amy Bach enforced compliance in the $250 million scheme by cutting off operators who refused to submit unrealistic meal counts. She was the one committing fraud and threatening to cut off these providers unless they committed fraud for her. Did you catch that?
Meanwhile, 21 minutes before the top of the hour, 6 more people have been charged in connection with massive fraud schemes in Minnesota. The Justice Department accusing these suspects of making various housing and medical claims reaching upwards of $6 million. Here's the prosecutor.
Minnesotans and taxpayers deserve to know the truth of the fraud. The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud.
I think it's so important for him to say that people are trying to minimize it. That should not be minimized.
And they're not even going to talk about it. So their own news hit on the TV isn't going to talk about all the shit that their actual reporting uncovered. Wow. The alleged mastermind behind Minnesota's $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scandal tied to the Somali community is accused of wielding extraordinary power through threats and what the government described as fake claims of racism. Amy Bach, who founded the Feeding Our Future nonprofit in 2016, used her growing authority to silence dissent, discourage scrutiny from state regulators, and cut off operators who refused to comply. She was extorting these people. While other defendants splurged on luxury homes, cars, and overseas properties, prosecutors said Bach instead controlled the levers of approval and reimbursement that allowed the scheme to flourish. One witness even recently described Bach as a god in how she enforced her authority. Court records show that $1 million flowed to Bach's longtime boyfriend, who appeared in trial exhibits posing inside a Rolls Royce with Bach standing nearby, underscoring her alleged proximity to the wealth generated by the scheme. This is Amy Bach. Does she look Somali to you? Trial evidence painted a picture of trial. This has already gone to trial. painted a picture of a dramatic rise, with Bach going from running a little-known nonprofit to overseeing one of the largest federal meal sponsors in Minnesota as she gained influence. For years, Feeding Our Future operated modestly, handling roughly $3 million to $4 million annually in federal child nutrition reimbursements. The trajectory changed abruptly during the COVID-19 pandemic, when emergency rule changes loosened oversight and allowed sponsors to submit claims without normal verification. As executive director of Feeding Our Future, Bach approved meal sites, some of which were fake, and then certified the claims, signing off on the reimbursements from the Minnesota Department of Education. She would soon preside over a network that claimed to have served 91 million meals, for which prosecutors say the scammers fraudulently received $250 million in federal funds, a scale of growth that far outpaced the nonprofit's pre-pandemic size and internal capacity. Later filings and sentencing releases described the total impact as closer to $3 million. To keep the scheme going, prosecutors said Bach used her authority to intimidate and control operators, approving implausible meal counts and cutting off those who refused to comply. Here she is posing with the Rolls Royce and her boyfriend, I guess, Malcolm Watson Jr. But why are we not talking about Amy Bach? Why does no right-winger know the name Amy Bach? If you were so concerned and this is such a huge scandal, why do you not know Amy Bach's name? And that she was convicted in like 2023? What? Because Nick Shirley didn't tell you her name? Nick Shirley didn't tell you to get outraged about the mastermind behind the plot that you guys are so up in arms about. It's insane. But I don't believe any of you actually care about fraud, because I never hear one of you mention sitting Senator Rick Scott, who, am I mistaken? He holds a leadership position with Senate Republicans. Made a play to be majority leader, didn't he? Rick Scott tries to rewrite history on his $1.7 billion Medicare fraud controversy. This is what Tim Walz was talking about with the white men. Conventional political wisdom would typically advise candidates to steer clear of mentioning their past controversies, but U.S. Senator Rick Scott went out of his way, quite literally, to attend former President Donald Trump's hush money trial in Manhattan, and reminded Americans that he once ran a healthcare company that was slapped with the largest Medicare fraud fine in U.S. history. In a press conference outside the courthouse in Manhattan, where Trump is on trial for fraud, Scott compared the criminal charges against Trump to the federal Medicare and Medicaid fraud investigation that resulted in $1.7 billion in fines against Columbia HCA, the healthcare company that helped make Scott the United States' wealthiest U.S. senator. So let me ask you another question. If you guys care, right-wingers in the audience, so much about fraud, why aren't you talking about the Mississippi fraud case? Because, my God, that one has retired pro football player Brett Favre retired pro wrestler, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Like, it's a wild fucking case, but you guys aren't talking about it because I don't believe you that you actually care about fraud, because you don't mention shit about Mississippi.
Since State Auditor Shad White first announced the largest welfare scandal in Mississippi's history 5 years ago, most of those indicted took plea deals, and today they still haven't been sentenced.
Yeah, perhaps even more surprising, no one has gone to trial until now. Investigative reporter CJ LeMaster joins us now with new developments in this case. CJ?
Well, Howard Holly, $77 million meant for the poorest Mississippians instead doled out like candy to former wrestlers, athletes, and nonprofits. But despite that, only one person is serving time behind bars more than 5 years later. Now, as the trial of Ted DiBiase Jr. draws closer, we explore how justice in this case continues to be delayed. Former pro wrestler Ted DiBiase Jr.'s federal trial begins January 6th. He's the only person indicted in the welfare fraud scandal.
This is the son of the $1 Million Man.
Wire fraud, theft, and money laundering. Prosecutors claimed he forged contracts to steal millions in funds meant for needy Mississippians so he could personally benefit. He's one of 7 people indicted in that sprawling conspiracy, but the only one serving time behind bars right now is the former head of the state's Department of Human Services, John Davis. A judge sentenced him to 32 years for state charges. He has yet to be sentenced for his federal crimes. The case for Latimer Smith, the former DHS employee, is under seal. It's unclear whether that case is still active. Nancy New, the head of the nonprofit this money funneled through, pleaded guilty to state and federal charges 3 years ago, but her sentencing also delayed. Same with her son, Zach. They've been out on bond since the plea deal. Ted DiBiase Jr.'s brother, Brett, pleaded guilty to state and federal charges too, but he hasn't been sentenced yet either. Christy Webb, former director of another nonprofit that helped grab this money, also hasn't received a sentence. Why such a long delay? It's believed all but Webb are cooperating with federal investigators, and some of that could come out in next month's trial against Ted DiBiase Jr. At the same time, we've had no new indictments in 2 years. Now, State Auditor Shad White has maintained his office did its job, but now it's up to federal authorities to tie up any loose ends here. And keep in mind, even though former NFL great Brett Favre took welfare dollars for speaking engagements he didn't give, Favre has yet to be charged, though he's paid some of that money back. Neither is the man who ran the state during this time.
Charge him!
Bryant, despite conversations and messages that appear to show some degree of involvement. Howard?
The article we were reading from was from a couple years ago, Flash. Yeah, Jim Justice just became a senator. And who? Shreve? They must be new too, because I don't know them. Yeah, Rick Scott was the wealthiest U.S. senator at the time of that article. And Ron Wingers, you care so much about fraud, yet you voted for a man literally convicted of fraud. I don't get it. I'm supposed to care about Somali daycares in Minnesota when you guys ignore all of this. And I don't even know, like, you know, if people are guilty of something in Minnesota, fucking charge them. And that seems like what the state has been doing since I showed you that the ringleader has literally been convicted. But Nick Shirley didn't show you her picture, did he? Because Nick Shirley is not a real journalist. Nick Shirley is a propagandist and a wannabe influencer that is trying to get famous. He's trying to get famous on YouTube, and he is wanting your views and clicks. He is using you. He is feeding you a narrative that you are apt to believe because it fits your already preconceived biases, in order to get famous. And then all of you have the nerve to fucking share it all over social media, tell me that I need to watch it. You're just giving him free publicity for his bullshit where he's manipulating you. And it's not like this is the first time the right has done this. May I remind you about James O'Keefe and Acorn, where he went into Acorn, deceptively edited a video that made it seem like they were giving money out to a pimp that was abusing women, but Acorn never did anything of the sorts. But man, the video makes for good play on cable news, doesn't it? The dude in the pimp outfit. Republicans defunded that organization, and they never did anything wrong. And if you don't believe me, look it up. Acorn never did anything wrong. You guys just fell for bullshit, and then you made a celebrity out of James O'Keefe. We're still dealing with that goddamn hemorrhoid on society. To this day, even after he defrauded his own organization, Project Veritas, he defrauded it. He committed fraud to make himself famous, created a whole organization and defrauded that organization, and you guys still share his shit out. It's pathetic. Stop falling for grifters. You're all so stupid. Stupid.
Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?
Yes. Yes.
Like one it and one back. One more click. Go we hit the set an alert when that shit goes live. Social fucking support and hit subscribe. Light one up and take a hit. He does no harm, but it takes no shit. He's the last one standing when the ship is sinking. Let's take another rip for JustinFREAKIN.
Light one up, tip one back. I'm JustinFREAKIN.
Not high enough for this shit.